everybody. My name is Rachel Gibson. I'm the sales manager here at Synergex. And today, along with some customers, I will be presenting on leveraging web services for UI. Being in sales at Synergex, I've talked to hundreds of customers with decades-old applications. And these decades-old applications also contain decades worth of invaluable business logic and data, which is why I think most of you still take my calls. When it comes to UI and UX, one kind of common theme that I notice is just a bit of anxiety, whether that's around an outdated toolkit UI or green screen or just a web-based UI that's just sort of outdated. There's an anxiety about it, and also the realization that it's hard to put aside stuff that comes up in the day-to-day and focus on such a future state project and something as big as tackling a new UI. You wouldn't be surprised, I'm sure, to see that in recent surveys, our customers, 44%, have said that weak UI UX is one of their biggest concerns around their application. But surprisingly, actually, only 6% have said that they're actively working on tackling that in the next 2 years. Today, we're going to talk to two customers that have really taken the bulls by the horn and tackled one of these UI UX projects. The first one, Radley, chose to do it in-house with the help of our development staff, and they'll talk a little bit more about how they engaged with us. And the second is Forward Solutions, and they actually worked with our professional services group, and we'll be showing you a proof of concept that we did in collaboration with them. If you walk away with anything today from this presentation, it's that you can actually tackle UI UX projects, and that Harmony Core is a viable middle layer to do so. I just want to say how excited I am to share these customer stories with you. We're going to start with Radley, and then we're going to move on to Forward. I'll kick off each of these conversations with a quick company overview, and then we'll get into a Q&A and a demo of each of the different pieces of software. Radley develops and implements manufacturing, warehouse, and EDI software. Founded in the early 70s, Radley began as an EDI company with two tech-savvy guys from Detroit with a focus on EDI software for the automotive industry. They've grown in the last 40 years since then, with over 600 customers in 30 countries and multiple industries, including Land O'Frost, Lockheed Martin, and Bridgestone. Radley develops and maintains multiple distinct software packages, both written in Synergy and in other languages. For the purpose of this presentation, we will be discussing the iCaris application. iCaris incorporates EDI communications and trading partner-specific logic to offer a complete release management and automated shipping solution. iCaris is Windows-based, and it can be run on demand, on-premise, or in the cloud. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm hoping you can go around and introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Tim Bunker. I've been with Radley for 29 years, working the majority of the time on Synergy-based applications. I am the development manager for our iCaris product.
Hi, I'm Alex Nowak, and I've been with Radley for about coming up on 6 years now, and I've been in the development department my entire time here. Focusing on the iCaris product, a bit with the ISC product, but most recently playing a larger role in this Angular DevExtreme new development side of things.
My name is Noreen Kim. I've been working with Radley for about 4 years now. I work primarily with the DevExtreme and Angular development right now.
I'm hoping you guys can just tell me a little bit more about the before state of iCaris and what tools were used in the middle and front ends.
Yeah, iCaris is a web-based app that was developed about 20 years ago in the early 2000s using classic ASP and JavaScript on the front end and VBScript and XFNL-Con and XF Server Plus for the middle layer. It uses IIS as a web server.
Perfect. And what kind of issues did you have with that setup?
Not necessarily product issues, but because of the old technologies, we're running into the risk of drop support and obsolescence. In addition, security concerns with 32-bit applications and the ASP technology. In addition, the UI is very dated, especially we have some data collection portion of our product that runs on a handheld scanner, and it is very clumsy and clunky for a small screen.
Mm-hmm. What were you looking for in a kind of a solution or replacement for those components?
We really wanted a cleaner UI was the first portion of it, and then more modern technology tools with an achievable solution that we can use very long-term. Resource-wise, we don't have the capacity to completely rewrite a product frequently. So we need something that is the newest technology so that it can last a long time.
Yeah.
In our business, we do bi-weekly releases of the product because of the demand for changes. So we're a very high productivity department, and rewrites just aren't in our plan.
What made you look at Harmony Core in the first place?
Initially, we were actually going to develop our own RESTful solutions with other technologies. We kind of stumbled there a bit, and we looked at XFNet, LinkNet, and Synergy.net, and we actually had Steve Ives out with our DevPartner subscription hours to come out and kind of set a roadmap for us. And we did that, but we had a proof of concept out of it that really didn't get anywhere, mainly because of lack of resources on our part. Mm-hmm. And then at the 2018 DevPartner conference, Harmony Core got introduced, and we had some interest in it. And then the next year, we actually had Steve out again to kind of get us started, and he got us rolling on Harmony Core, and then especially with traditional bridge, which is a big part of our solution that mm-hmm. we're developing now.
Yeah, it pays to go to the DevPartner conference, so I'm glad that led to that decision. Can you just tell me a little bit more about, how did you convince management to fund this project?
Management knew we had to do something over time, but like I said, we had searched for a lot of solutions, and then we went down the Harmony Core initially, and we weren't convinced to start with until we heard about traditional bridge. Traditional bridge and the ability to tie our current application to the new technology was really the point that convinced management to say, okay, we can do this and we can move forward with this solution.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about the front end tools and languages that you used on that?
Yeah, so we use Angular and DevExtreme. We were initially looking into Angular and React, but decided to move forward with Angular. One of the big reasons for this was we wanted to match our counterpart data collection division in Grand Rapids, Michigan, as they were already using Angular and DevExtreme for their web-based application project.
Perfect. Can you talk a little bit about your experience working with the various Synergex employees that sort of had their hand in this project?
Yeah. Overall, it was pretty positive. Jeff and Steve have been very valuable resources to us throughout this whole process. Their prompt responses with emails, the Harmony Core office hours, the bi-weekly touch-base meetings we've been having, plus their assistance with troubleshooting and debugging anything that we've been running into have been great. Not to mention their assistance with our synergy side development helped us move forward with our implementation.
Well, that's great to hear. Was there anything about the implementation of this that positively surprised you?
We were very pleasantly surprised with how well traditional bridge fit our needs to call our existing traditional synergy methods, since we have a very large code base of about 2,500 and more modules. We also really like the ability to embed this new implementation into the current solution for a seamless transition for our customers.
Perfect. Yeah. Speaking of that, what are your plans for your solution and Harmony Core and your UI going forward?
Yeah, so we have 3 synergy-based products and are currently only partially into our project for the first product. So we'll be finishing iCares first, then moving on to iReady and then ISC.
Perfect.
Also, I should mention that we're also planning on using a phased approach for embedding this new UI and Harmony Core into the current product. Eventually, we'll be eliminating our ASP-based UI and XFNL-COM processes. We'll also be replacing some synergy logic called via traditional bridge with Harmony Core OData calls.
Great. The phased approach is good to hear about, because I think it can feel really overwhelming for customers to do it in one big bang. So that's a good approach. Do you guys have any words of wisdom for other customers that are looking to start this kind of journey with their applications?
Yeah. So initially we had professional services do a lot of our first round of development, which included the code generation to kind of get us up and running. But we also highly recommend running through the tutorials that are available out on the Harmony Core GitHub/wiki ahead of time to better understand the code base.
Yeah, no, that's a great tip. And last question, best for last. Has this project changed how iCares is viewed within Radley?
Yeah, for those of us who've been around for the 20 years and some longer, some shorter, it's really given us some hope for moving forward. For the last 8 to 10 years, we knew we had this looming technological debt that we didn't see a way out of, didn't see a way to eliminate. And now with this project moving forward and the success we're having, we all see that path and see that we have a future, with this product without tearing it apart and starting over.
I think that's a really good segue into showing a demo of the new UI that you guys have been working on.
So to hopefully put a visual to what Tim and Noreen were just explaining in their question and answers with Rachel, I'm going to start in our current environment, a production version, so you guys can see what we're working with. So if I log into iCares, I'm going to start in our status inquiry release report function, which is where our customers would go run a report of their trading partner requirements on file. So do a query of my trading partners. I'm going to run a report for the Porsche trading partner. So this is serving as an example for the sake of my demo of like a iCares module just makes a single call to the server. So passes in parameters, a report gets generated on the back end, and then that report gets served up to the server for display. So if I hit execute here, I want to submit all. We've got my report. So essentially no dependency on state here. Just a single call to the server and it serves up a report. So I'm going to parallel this with a development environment where here we have Angular and DevExtreme components embedded within the classic ASP UI shell. If I go to our same status inquiry report now, hopefully not too jarring of a difference, but not completely transparent, looks a little bit different. But now when I do a query, this right here was an OData call to get my trading partner information from the server. So I can, again, if I can spell Porsche correctly, I can run this same exact report and a call is being made to our server, the exact same traditional Synergy program as was called in the current product, just now by means of the traditional bridge through Harmony Core. So as Tim and Noreen touched on, super cool, just adding that middle layer and not having to make any changes to the traditional Synergy routines on the back end. They just get called. Now, to parallel that, a maintenance screen, I'm going to go into our shipper maintenance where our customers would maintain their shipment information to their trading partners. I'm going to pull up a shipper. Our maintenance screens, different than the report functionalities, there is a dependency on state here. We're not stateless in the sense that channels remaining open on the back end, file channels, and static memory holding record buffers in memory. So as you navigate screen to screen, there's a dependency on the user's session persisting. So got header level shipment information. If I want to drill down and see the items on my shipper, I can see I've got 2 parts shipping on this shipment. If I narrow in yet again, item level information, but I can go yet a step further to see the container information that this part is shipping in boxes on pallets. Here's my pallet serials. If I want to look at the boxes, the box serials that are shipping on a certain pallet, I can go in a level deeper. If I want to look at a different pallet's box serials, I have to go back a screen and then move forward a screen to see the serials shipping on the different pallet. So no real high overview of the shipment, a lot of navigation required to maintain the shipper, just some things we kept in mind. But what I'm going to jump over and show is now a proof of concept, but the purely Angular solution that we've proven out with Harmony Core exclusively. So no classic ASPs anymore and no XFNL-COM, just Harmony Core, traditional bridge, and OData calls with a purely Angular and DevExtreme front end. So if I go into shipper maintenance in the purely Angular application, you'll see an OData call was made to retrieve all my shipper header information. I've got my same DNUS 7372 shipper that we were just in. I can drill into it and see overview information, but we've added to a grid, which also making OData calls is displaying my items for this shipment, my containers for this shipment, not having to go through multiple levels. We can just jump right into a item. And if I want to go back, similarly, added functionality if you want to edit multiple rows in one try rather than having to scroll through your items as I showed in the previous. So while there will be a transition to the maintenance is similar to the report that we will be building custom Angular elements and embedding them into the product, as those guys touched on, the eventual goal will be to completely eliminate the COM component and the classic ASPs to get to a purely Angular DevExtreme running with Harmony Core, traditional bridge, and OData calls solution. So that's where we're at currently.
Thanks to Radley for their participation in this presentation. That was excellent. Now we're going to move on to Forward Solutions. Founded in 1986, Forward Solutions is the UK's leading independent national supplier of software and services to the freight and logistics industry. The Forward team is one of the longest established freight software development companies, providing an end-to-end solution for a wide range of operators in the UK, Europe, Asia, and the US. Its flagship product, Forward Office, is a comprehensive and fully integrated freight management system capable of handling every aspect of freight forwarding, logistics, and transportation industries, from initial sales lead through operations to cash receipts and management reporting. As you can imagine, they've had quite a time since Brexit was negotiated. There are a few characteristics of Forward Office that are different than most of our other customers' applications. Mainly, the front end of the application runs on Windows, while the back end runs on Linux. For some background, Forward began a proof of concept with Synergex's professional services group in early 2021. The purpose of this POC was to prove that Harmony Core is performant and scalable as a middle layer in Forward's environment. Professional Services Group handled both the programming for Harmony Core as well as the creation of the new UI. With that, I'll transition now to our chat with Richard Litchfield at Forward Solutions. After that, we're actually going to have Yusuf Jamil from our Professional Services Group present the demo of the POC, as he was the one who coded the front end.
Hi, Richard. How you doing?
I'm very good, Rachel. How are you?
Good. I'm hoping you can just give a little intro to yourself and your role at Forward.
Yep, certainly. So my name is Richard Litchfield. I'm the managing director of a company called Forward Solutions Limited. Forward Solutions is part of the Freight Software Group, which is the largest UK independent supplier of freight management solutions. We've been around for about 30 years, and we're employing about 25 members of staff.
Perfect. Thank you. Can you tell me a little bit more about Forward Office outside of the proof of concept that we worked on? In particular, what's in use in the middle layer and the UI?
Okay, so Forward Office is a freight management solution, so for all modes of transport, so a road, sea, and air. It's been developed and enhanced over 20 years or so. Developed in Synergy, so using XF Server Plus routines and toolkit for the UI.
Great, thanks. And what kind of issues were you running into with that setup?
So our main issue today is the user interface and the look and feel of our application. And that obviously affects the customer experience. So with new potential customers, we're finding it increasingly challenging to get through the door. When we unveil our feature-rich product, the first thing they see, obviously, is the UI. And it's difficult to get beyond the UI and demonstrate the functionality behind that. And with the existing customers, we're under increasing pressure really to assist them with the benefit of new UI tools, which today we're not able to offer.
Perfect. Yeah. A lot of folks in that boat. What were you looking for in a solution to these issues you were facing?
So we are looking to retain the feature-rich sort of functionality within our solution, but present that with a more modern and also feature-rich UI. We want to minimize the development in terms of our application, define a realistic and defined time to market, which obviously with minimal risk, essentially.
Perfect. And then that kind of leads into, kind of the proof of concept that we did with you. I'm wondering if you can tell me a little bit about how you chose which part of the application to tackle with the proof of concept.
Okay, so we wanted to find a very well used, not too basic, not too brief, but defined area of the system. So complex enough to test things like performance and to offer lots of sort of different approaches from a UI. Not too basic, so not just a maintenance suite or something like that. And importantly, something which was defined so that we avoided any sort of slippage within the scope of the project.
Yep. And as I mentioned earlier, you contracted with our professional services group for that proof of concept. And I'm just wondering if you can talk a little bit about what it was like to work with that team.
Yeah, really positive, actually. Very knowledgeable members of staff, both technically, but also, I think, appreciative of what we were trying to achieve. And seemingly they have come across this sort of challenge before. They just seem to get it, really. And that obviously helped in terms of coming to a conclusion on the POC.
Perfect. And can you tell me a little if there was anything that positively surprised you about this implementation?
So the purpose of the POC was really to demonstrate, obviously, that our project approach was in the right direction, correct and justified. We did come across a few obstacles, but I was pleasantly surprised and impressed with how quick we then resolved those. And actually, I felt that it was a justifiable POC at the end of that, actually.
Perfect. That's what I like to hear. Has this project changed how Forward Office is viewed within Forward Solutions at all?
It has. And for me, I think it will give the product a new lease of life. It's a win-win situation. So we get to retain all of the functionality within the core solution while sort of taking advantage of latest sort of UI innovation. And furthermore, we'll have a defined project timescale on the conversion. So I think it's rejuvenated our product and how we're going to develop that over the short term.
Perfect. What are your plans for your UI and Harmony Core going forward?
So now we've proven the POC, the idea is to rewrite our entire application. That is split into several phases. And yeah, we're going to start that imminently, so June, essentially. And that will be a combination of our own internal resources and Synergex resources.
Perfect. Really, I know we're all looking forward to getting that started. And hopefully by the next time we have a conference, we have a whole brand new app to show off. So yep. That'll be exciting. As an executive, can you tell us just how do you justify the time and cost of tackling a new UI UX?
Well, for me, this is the easiest question. So, as I said before, the weakness of Forward Office is broadly our UI. It's hindering our sales opportunities. It's frustrating to some degree our existing customers because they recognize that the look and feel could be improved there as well. So, for me, it's an absolute must for the longevity of our own product. Our customers want it. I know that our new potential customers will want it, and we're the sort of company who listens to our customers, hence why we're going to deliver it.
Do you have any words of wisdom for any other customers that are watching this that are looking to start this journey?
Yeah, again, an easy one, simply do it.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you, Richard. We're going to phase now into the demo from Yusuf, who was one of the devs that worked on this project.
Greetings to everyone joining us on this conference. I am going to walk you through a proof of concept that we've built for Ford computers, which is intended to replace a legacy toolkit version that looks something like this. We've built this browser-based application on top of Angular, which is a single-page JavaScript framework. And we've used Harmony Core and CodeGen to facilitate using the same synergy logic that the toolkit version uses. So we can go ahead and log in. And what this will do is check these credentials in the back end and supply us with a security token that we'll maintain. We can look up booking by multiple criteria. We can go ahead and look up a booking by client. We'll have a client called Synergex. And as you'll see, this pops up an autocomplete, which you can click a row off of. This will load us, this will take us to a data representation part of the UI where job statistics is basically static data. And we have dynamic data over here, which we can update, add to, or delete. We have a cool toggle box function over here that we can use to toggle or display or hide data that we do not want to see or data that we need to see. We can expand into any of these rows, and this will show us more information about this booking. As you'll see, if we go back to the toggle box, here we have now more data that we can control and decide what we want or need in our view. We can edit data right on this expanded view of the booking, or we can go back to the list and just edit rows from right here. You'll see we have nifty tools like an information pop-up, which basically goes to different tables and brings data, consolidates it into just the essentials about, in this example, the supplier. We can try editing a currency over here, and this field and certain other fields in this application are validated. Every time we change it, they're validated from backend, and it will only let us choose, select, or put in data that is accepted. In this case, we can go ahead and try a currency. Say for this one, we can go ahead and try USD. And once we focus out, it will complain and say that this currency is not acceptable. And this will change this back to GBP. And we can go ahead and do some updates over here. I want to be able to see the estimate, which I want to update, and the share percentage. We can go back here and change this to 120. And once we focus out, you'll see a save button pops up. We can hit that. And this row was saved. We're able to add a row, and we are easily able to delete rows. Okay. And what else? Let's see. We have a brilliant function over here. It's a filter box that we can use, and we can further filter into our return search matches. For example, we can look up an origin of New York City, and this will bring us an autocomplete as well. And we can filter by the data that only has New York City. So that was our demo. We hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you to Richard and Yusuf for participating in that part of the presentation. We're going to move on now to the live Q&A, where we do have folks from both Radley and Forward available to answer any further questions.
All right. Thank you, Rachel, and thank you to the team. That was an awesome presentation. So as you saw, this session was intended to give a high-level overview of Harmony Core and UIs. But for those of you that are interested in more technical information, I have posted a link to the Harmony Core tutorials that Noreen mentioned. And I also posted a link to the case study of another customer who recently used Harmony Core to update their UI. Both of these will give you more technical details on the solution. Now, it's time for some questions, and we have everyone who is in the video here for your question answering fun. And it looks like we have a couple things in the chat already. If you want to ask a question out loud, use the raise hand function, and I'll call on you, at which point you'll be able to unmute yourself and speak. So let's take a look here. Our first question comes from Doug Ritchie, and he says, I heard that Forward's original application used took kill for design of the UI. How much more complicated would a UI be for an application that doesn't use tool kill displays? Sorry, it looks like
I think they meant toolkit.
toolkit.
I think that was
Great.
a typo.
Okay. Richard or Yusuf, do you have any thoughts on these?
Yusuf, do you want to answer that one, or?
Sorry, could you repeat that question one more time?
Toolkit, yeah. So the question is, I heard that Forward's original application used Toolkit for design of the UI. How much more complicated would a UI be for an application that doesn't use Toolkit displays?
Sure. So it wouldn't be much more complicated per se. As with our work with the Forward POC, Richard kind of wanted a modern browser-based UI that still had the same feature-rich, functionality as the Toolkit UI. So it was just up to us to map out all of that and essentially bring those same functions in a standardized browser web app based way. So it's not something much more complicated. It's the same thing as any other application being developed.
Great.
I think Dan Ellis had a little.
We're joined by Dan Ellis. Dan, do you want to unmute your mic?
I think he wants to, but maybe is having trouble doing that.
All right, well, let's move on to our next question. This one comes from Steve Ives. For Radley, how has your experience with DevExpress DX Stream been? Would you recommend it to others?
In general, it's been pretty good. I think the one caveat with a lot of front-end frameworks is the more customized you need their provided widgets to be, the more difficult it becomes because you start to stray away from what they provide. So I definitely can recommend it, but that really depends on how complicated your UI is.
Awesome. Anyone else from the Radley team want to speak to that?
One of the issues that we've run into, and not that it's a bad thing, is our existing functionality that we had built into the old ASP application, replicating it in DevExtreme has been a little bit more of a challenge because it's more customization to their standard tools.
Yeah. Well, great. Thanks for that. Dan Ellis, I believe you're able to speak now. Did you want to add anything to the previous question?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, great. Yeah, in terms of the UI, it doesn't matter whether it's Toolkit or whether it's Character Cell or Windows, because obviously the process that we're doing is we're separating. If the UI isn't already separated from the business logic, we'll have to do that for this kind of project. And that was one of the key aspects of the Forward project. We wanted to be able to make sure that, as Richard said, they've got 30 years worth of rich business logic functionality. And we wanted to make sure that we could share that with the existing programs that run on Linux or on Windows, and also share that with a browser-based application. And that's what we managed to do, because the process is going to take, probably up to a year to write the new system. We wanted to make sure that we can use the Toolkit programs in conjunction with the browser-based programs and gradually phase out the Toolkit programs over a period of time.
Great. Okay, so our next question comes from Gordon Ireland, and he says, do you find any performance issues when doing all I/O via web services rather than direct file access in the application? Yusuf, Dan, Steve?
Steve, you want to answer that one?
Sure. Performance is something you always have to keep an eye on in any client-server application, whether it's using web services or not. And the difference here is that, especially with the OData capabilities, you can really zoom in very specifically on the exact data that you need and not bring back a single byte that you don't need. So really, in the code-centric stuff, OData lets you really optimize that stuff very well. And in the traditional bridge side of things, when you're calling custom code, that's when you need to give it a little bit more thought and make sure that you design the interface to those routines appropriately and use them appropriately. But it's no worse than any other client-server environment.
Thanks for that answer, Steve. Dan or Yusuf, do you have anything to add?
I would also point out that actually in the demo, the website was running in Azure, and it was accessing the data over a transatlantic VPN link. So I don't think it was particularly, and the data, the Harmony Core instance, it was running on a PC for that demo as well, not server grade material. So I thought performance-wise, it worked really well. And one of the other sort of issues that we was managing that we wanted to prove out in the POC is if we could actually do break processing within the Angular UI, just as the Toolkit software does break processing, and if it would perform fast enough. And it surpassed our expectations, really. As you wouldn't have known when Yusuf was doing his demo, that every time he was going through a field, well, not every field, but a lot of those fields, it was actually brake processing using the signal R interface and validating that using the same validation logic that the toolkit programs use. And there is no perceptible delay when you're doing that, which was really pleasantly surprising.
Part of the POC, from my point of view, was very much focused on performance. It was probably my biggest concern. Through circumstance, actually, the project moved in that direction anyway, and I was very happy at the end of it. And as Dan said, actually, the setup for the demonstration that everyone's just seen is far removed, actually, almost pushes the performance aspect to its extreme. And despite that, it still performs very well. So, yeah, as a customer, I was pleased with that, and it was a concern from the outset.
I also want to add that as a single-page application framework, Angular really helps out in making the data size that we're asking or calling from the server really slow and minified. Also, we're using data in a smart way. We are only calling the data we need, and as Steve pointed out, OData really precisely hits those endpoints that we need, and we're not getting any extra additional data. And whatever data we will need on a subsequent part of the user session, we tend to keep that or cache that, so performance is always top notch.
Thanks, everyone. That was great. Okay, so this question comes from Tim Laverne. Tim says, to both companies, was all the IO OData queries, or did you use EF Core API at all? Radley team, why don't we start with you?
We did not use EF Core directly at all. It's either OData or we hooked into through traditional bridge to our existing routines if the logic was more complex, or if we needed some just a little more behind the scenes there.
We did the same on the Forward project as well, and we used OData to load things up. But where we wanted to do things like where we updated a booking reference, we used a traditional bridge, and we used the same subroutine that the toolkit programs use to update a transaction within the Angular software as well, using bridge.
Can I just add as well that in Forward's case, the data is not Synergy ISAM data, it's a relational database. So we were able to we're not using the Synergy EF provider. In Radley's case, it's the Synergy EF provider. In Forward's case, it's a third-party EF provider for an underlying relational database, and we just plug that EF provider into Harmony Core instead of the Synergy one, and hey presto, you've got Harmony Core web services on top of a relational database with traditional bridge code at the back end as well.
Tim Laverne says, great, thanks. Okay, so our next question comes from Adam Collar. Adam says, how did you find abstracting business logic that is nested with UI logic, abstracting that out into clean subroutines, which Harmony Core can leverage? Did you use a strategy, method to this approach, etc.?
From the Radley perspective, this was probably the most interesting part of the project. We have, I want to say, and Alex, you can correct me on this, about 1,700 ASPs, majority of which have some customization business logic in. We do customer level and integration level customizations in those ASPs. So we actually took all of that logic and went through and analyzed each of those and built a standard routine for customizing the Angular functions. So they actually make a Synergy call to go get those customizations at this point. So the business logic is technically removed from the front end, but we're still capable of customizing at a customer and integration level.
On the Forward project, it was actually something that one of Richard's team did for us, but this was probably where having the toolkit software helped, because he was able to pull out all the break processing logic and all the update logic, because it was in a separate part in the toolkit program, pull those out into subroutines, that we could then call via Bridge, and then just X-call those subroutines within the toolkit software. So we didn't actually do that. We just obviously put it into Bridge, but it was really smooth, and it didn't take you very long to do that at all.
Thanks, Dan. And thanks, Tim. So another question that comes up sometimes is talking a little bit about risks. And I wonder if any of you could talk about risks with managing a project like this.
And for us, I think I already touched on it. Oh, sorry, Richard. Our big risk was performance. How performant would this be? Because essentially we were taking the toolkit field break processing, and we were putting it into Angular, and so that was quite a key part of this. And as I mentioned before, it works really well. The Signal R interface is super quick.
Thanks, Dan.
I think the risk, from my point of view, was unknowns, and the amount of effort and time and cost that would go into this project, hence the POC. And that was a great opportunity for us to understand the challenges. We talked about performance, that was a challenge, but it was addressed. So yeah, for me, the risk of this project is trying to make it as clean as possible and as defined as possible. We have, as Forward, tried to rewrite our application from the ground up. And the risk on that project was that we could never get to an endpoint. We could never define how long it would take. Whereas I see with this approach, it's definable, we can phase it, and of course, if it's definable, we can plan around that. So yeah, I think no project is risk-free, but I think this approach mitigates as much risk as possible.
Thanks, Richard. Tim, did you have something to comment on there?
Yeah, just from the Radley perspective, the same issue. It's overrun on the project. Being able to manage deploying the mixed technology on our part, and then just the idea of how much time it's going to take, and I think with traditional Bridge, that just was a lifesaver for us, where that cut down the amount of time in this project by 100%.
Awesome. Love to hear that.